With a broad, rebellious streak, Daniel Morgan, the old wagoner, was not a man to trifle with. He fought in the French and Indian War and later the American Revolution. His elite force, Morgan's riflemen, wore hunting shirts, and their deadly aim was feared by all they encountered. He fought in the battles of Boston, Saratoga, and the ill-fated invasion of Canada. But his greatest moment came in 1781 on an unremarkable field known as Cowpens. Commanding half of General Nathaniel Greene's Continental Army of the South, Morgan played a cat-and-mouse game with Banastre Tarleton and his British regulars. Eventually, with the rain-swollen Broad River at their backs, Morgan's men turned to face Tarleton and his mounted dragoons. Let's meet Daniel Morgan, the hero of Cowpens.
Yep, I made Brigadier General. You see, I was dispatched to that fine state of South Carolina with perhaps the best general we had. That would be General Nathaniel Greene. You know, Greene always reminded me of a snapping turtle I caught once in Virginia, about that big, and if that critter ever got his beak into your flesh, you could cut the head off, turn him into a good soup, eat the soup, and that beak would still be right there in your flesh. Well, look, we lost a lot more before we started winning. Yeah, General Greene used to say, we fight, we get beat, we rise, and fight again. Yeah, Well, unfortunately, I had to go down to South Carolina before the war started to turn. Oh, but that reminds me. You know, when I was younger, I ran a wagoning business for the British. And my cousin Daniel from Kentucky, that's Daniel Boone, he worked with me, and sometimes we'd celebrate too well, which would mean my drivers would sleep late, and I found the only way I could rouse them was by kicking them. Well, I kicked a fellow one day, and he sank his teeth into my leg, and while I was hopping around and hollering and trying to kick him with the other leg, Cousin Daniel got him in a headlock and began to play a tune on his skull with an iron skillet. But then this young British officer jumped on my back and I threw him off up against the wagon wheel. Well, the Brits, they sentenced me to 500 lashes. Yeah, I survived that, barely. But then they told me they'd only given me 499. So I figured after that I owed King George one stroke. And finally, I got a chance to pay him back when I met his young hero, Lieutenant Colonel Banastre Bloody Ban Tarleton. You see, I had seen the mutilated bodies of those patriots that tried to surrender to little Banny and his British thugs, and they just rode them down and hacked them up. Yeah, well, little Banny thought he was a wolf, but he didn't know that this wolf was gonna be waiting for him. See, I learned from the brave Cherokee. They had watched the wolf packs work. So what the wolf does is the wolf will find the prey, and then he'll go after the prey. And then if the prey turns and runs away, the wolf will follow. But when the prey turns around on him, the wolf will run away. And then when the prey gets tired of that, he'll turn around and go that way, and then the wolf will follow him, and they do that back and forth until the prey begins to really get tired, and then you attack. Well, I was on the run at that time across the state of South Carolina with half the Continental Army with me. And little Benny, with his thugs, was chasing me. So, when we got to the western part of the state, I came to a place called Cowpens. Oh, pretty green grass and rolling kind of hills, and something began to burn in my brain to make a stand. Now, I knew that Banny had a whole lot more men than we did. So, the night before the battle, I went from campfire to campfire and talked to my boys. And I helped them sharpen their blades, the tomahawks, the swords, the knives, and then I talked to them about the families, and I said to them, just give me one fire, boys. That's all. Just give me one more fire. And that's it. Well, at dawn, sure enough, right after I had situated my Continental soldiers, half of them with the Kentucky sharpshooters in the middle, and then on my right flank was the boys from Georgia, the militia, and the militia from the Carolinas was on the left, and right behind the Continentals was half of the other Continental soldiers, and they were down in a depression in the ground. But the old band didn't worry. He comes straight charging through, just like he always did. Didn't even stop to arrange his troops. But for that morning, for little band, hell came to breakfast. My sharp-shooting militia boys opened up on them with a defile angle, and boy, was that murderous effect. But the Brits kept on coming, and then those Kentucky Deadeyes and half them Continentals opened up on them again. Boom! Even worse effect. But those Brits, they just kept coming right on, and meanwhile, I had told the boys in the middle to execute a wheel-right maneuver so they could protect my right flank against little Banny's mad dash. Well, for some reason, and to this day I do not know why, they began to march off the field in good order. Looked like a retreat. Well, that's what the Brits thought too. Well, I rode over as fast as I could with my horse, and I got them turned around, and I said, boys, look, just one more fire, and the day is ours. But here comes them Brits, because they thought they had broken the spirit of the cowardly colonials one more time. Well, as they went up that hill and they got to the top, they looked down in that depression, and all they saw were the muscles of my boys' muskets. Well, I shouted, "Fire!" And they did. Whew! What a hail of lead and sheet of flame, and that noise, well, those Brits rocked back. And then I said, "Give 'em the bayonet." And we did, and we went through them Brits like a bowling ball through dry corn stalks. Hell, most of those Brits, well, they just got down on their knees and they threw their little weapons down, and they were begging for mercy. And even little bloody Ban, he gave up and did a fair deal of running. We gave him a devil of a whipping that day. And then, when the last Brit that could move had surrendered, I rode my horse over those hills and I said, "To God be the glory." Well, then I got the numbers. Yep. Out of 1,200 British soldiers, we had captured 500, 200 wounded, and more than 100 killed. And our casualties? Just 12 brave souls killed. That's right. Just 12. Well, that's some kind of miracle, I'd say. Yep. To you, boys.
John Featherston is not a name familiar to most Americans, but he was one of many unsung heroes in our history. He was a free African American who was one of 70 seamen and Marines aboard the ship Defense under Captain Simon Tufts in the War for American Independence. In 1775, this vessel defended Charleston Harbor against the British ships the Tamar and the Cherokee in what was known as the Hog Island Channel action. You are about to meet John Featherston. It is hoped that through what you hear, he will receive his rightful recognition in America's history.
I was a free man before the Revolution. I am an American and a Navy man. I fought in the very first naval battle of the American Revolution in the Charleston Harbor. 2 other Americans of African descent served with me, George Cooper and Stephen Bond. We served on the American schooner Defense under Captain Simon Tufts. The British had plied their trade with me, trying to convince me that I would be better off with them, threatening terrors upon me if I did not join them. I felt I might have a better chance at greater freedom in a new country that many folks were talking about in the taverns, but I chose the Patriots and my love for the sea. In the fall of 1775, we were attacked by the British. Now, in October, we feared that redcoats would attack the Cooper River waterfront and our city. The provincial Congress saw the need to create a navy and map out a plan to defend Charleston from the British, to block them any way possible. William Drayton and Thomas Hayward were to head a mission to block the channel of Hog Creek by scuttling 4 old ships. Scuttling means sinking them. It was to block the British from entering our harbor. They armed our schooner. We trained hard to defend the harbor. They added soldiers from South Carolina, 1st and 2nd regiments to help us. The Congress ordered Colonel William Moultrie to choose 35 of us to serve as Marines on the schooner. Our mission was to tow the 4 hulks to the right place and sink them in the channel without being attacked. We sailed under the cover of fog that morning. 70 seamen and Marines, 2 9-pound guns, 6 6-pounders, and 2 4-pounders. William Henry Drayton sailed with us to supervise our mission. While we were towing the hulks, 2 British ships approached. One of them caught the wind and was coming on fast. They fired 6 shots. We were hit 3 times. Damage was small, but we returned with our heaviest 9-pounders. We saw 2 shots go through the enemy's rigging. But they were swiftly on course to set one of our hulks on fire. We were able to hurry and sink the other 3 hulks and escape. When we anchored at the harbors at the end of the docks, at the end of Market Street, a whole crowd of folks had gathered to watch the battle and greeted us with cheers. I must say, it was the happiest day of my life. However, on our run the next day, the British followed again and fired 130 shots at our ship. Thankfully, the wind was with us that day, and they fell short all around us as we moved quickly in the harbor. By a miracle, no one was harmed. 2 days later, William Henry Drayton wrote to the Council of Safety that reads, "The Hog Island Channel battle was the actual commencement of hostilities by the British and an event at the highest moment to the southern part of the United Colonies. But the matter of getting our wages was a problem. You see, I served on that ship for 7 months, only received 2 months' pay. Every time we asked for wages, Captain Tuff says, 'You must ask Governor Rutledge, for I have no more wages from the government to give you.' I heard of a position serving under Captain Thomas Grimble, a true hero and leader of Charleston's District Regiment, 6th Independent Artillery Company. I jumped at it. I became one of 100 men in charge of 12 guns at the fort. Now, I heard later that the defense was out capturing prize ships for the Patriots, doing very well, when they were suddenly captured by the British. They were sent to New York Harbor, where many of my mates were put on prison ships. Now, I will spare you what happened on those. So, I was mightily glad I stayed in Charleston. I served in the skirmishes at Fort Moultrie, manning those guns, shooting at British ships until they got tired and gave up. We were a small company, but we were proud and fought hard.